all the time. I'm dancing in the background and I'm like, oh yes, I'm so happy they can't see me. And then it goes. And then I was like, oh wait. One day I will get my act together and have everything perfect. But today is not that day. So I'm so happy that you are here. If you're watching live, in the comments where you're watching from. And I hope that y'all are excited. Y'all, I was blown away by this month's podcast audit submissions. So we are not going to waste any time. We are going to get right after it because we had the most submissions we've had. So if you're brand new around here, hi, I'm Crystal. I teach entrepreneurs how to start, launch, and market their podcast. And if you're watching this, there's a good chance you're either in our free Facebook group, the Profit Podcast Online Community. If you're not there, come hang out with us there, or you're watching us on YouTube. And today, what we are doing is we had lots of podcasters, whether they've launched their podcast and they've been doing it for a while, or they are just trying to figure out still the ins and outs of how they want their show to be. We've had lots of people submit to have their podcast audited. So that's what's happening here today. This is 100% free. But I do want to give one little caveat that we do give priority to members of our Potty People community. So if you want to learn more about that, you can always check out thepottypeople.com and see what that is all about, because we have so much fun. But we are going to get into podcast audits today. So first and foremost, I promised Lori of the Potty People, we are going to get to her podcast first. And she has actually, she hasn't launched her podcast yet. So I wanted to start with her for a few reasons. One, again, she's a member of our Potty People. Hang on, I'm trying to pull up her application. But two, I wanted this to be a word of encouragement for anybody that feels like they're stuck, kind of behind the scenes by themselves because they're trying to figure out your podcast, right? So I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want you to feel that way at all. I want you to feel like you have a safe community, you have a space to reach out and ask questions about your podcast journey, and you can learn all the things that you need to know about how to get your podcast off the ground. So let me see. I try to get fancy, y'all. And this is what happens when I try to get fancy. I totally botch things. I'm rushing around behind me, before we get started. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And obviously we should do these things far more in advance, but I'm just being real with y'all. This is just how everything went down right before this happened. For those of you that have a podcast that you submitted, I'm actually going to be able to share your artwork and share a little bit about your show today. So for those of you thinking, should I apply for these podcast audits? Yeah, you get free publicity. So yeah, just another little plug for these free audits that we do every month. So we are going to start with Lori. Like I said, she is a member of the Potty People community, and her podcast is called For the Love of Travel. I'm looking over here because I'm looking at my notes. I'm looking at our application. I promise. I know that you're there, but I'm reading over here. So I ask, what is your topic about? This is one of the questions in the application. And Lori says, on this podcast, I'll talk about destinations around the world and in my own backyard. So I know that Lori lives in Canada. She told me where, and now I can't remember where. But y'all, I live in Houston, Texas, and I just know Lori's really far away from me. So she is in Canada. But I also share travel tips as well as catch up with other travelers for travel advice and stories to help make your trip the best one yet. I love that, right? Especially for people that love to travel. You want to know that it's going to be a little bit easier to, whether it's pack for the right season that you're going and visiting, or that you're heading out and you have everything. I love For the Love of Travel because I think that's really going to resonate with the audience that she's talking to, because if you don't love to travel, this podcast isn't for you. I love the draw a line in the sand. This is how it's going to go down. you either like to travel or you don't. If you're a hermit and you like to stay inside your house, you're a little agoraphobic after quarantine. Like, I get it. I totally understand that. But this is going to be for people that like to travel. So I really like that. So her ideal audience is people who enjoy travel. My assumption is correct. They want to get the most for their money by being prepared when they do travel. If for some reason they can't travel, hopefully listening to the podcast will take them away for a while. So I love this so much because, as you know, as everybody knows, right? Like we've been in quarantine for the last year. And whenever, I had a conversation with Lori recently about her show, and we were asking questions, our little group of the potty people, we're asking questions like, well, what does this podcast look like if not everyone can travel right now? And I love that she put in here, I'm going to read this again. If for some reason they can't travel, talking about her audience, hopefully listening to the podcast will take them away for a little while. I love this. I think it's going to be an awesome podcast. So she has not launched yet. Like, she's in the process of getting everything together. And so when asked, well, why are you submitting your podcast to be audited? This is what she says. I have my artwork completed as well as the intro episode. I'm looking for validation that I'm on the right track and suggestions for what could be changed or improved. Okay, so this is really cool. She has a clip that I'm going to attempt to play. If y'all have been here before for these, I always try to play the audio clips. Sometimes you can hear them, sometimes you can't, and we're just hi, I don't know who this is, y'all. I don't know why in the Facebook group, like I know Kathy's watching in the Facebook group and it says, hi, Kathy, she's here, but I don't know who this is. So, hi, I'm so happy that you're here. And I always like, I don't know who this is, but I'm glad that you're here. This is fun. Yeah, I'm glad that you're enjoying this. So, I'm going to share my screen real fast. And I guess it's, you don't really care to see it. There's not really a lot going on, but just so we have it here, we're gonna share her audio file, and I'm gonna turn this way up, way up. And I hope I don't regret that. I hope this isn't really loud, but we're gonna turn it on and we're gonna see if we can hear Lori's audio.
Welcome to For the Love of Travel. I'm your host, Lori Sweet from VoyageWriters.com. On this podcast, I'll talk about destinations around the world and in my own backyard. I'll also share travel tips as well as catch up with other travelers for travel advice and stories to help make your next trip the best one yet. I'd love it if you could stick around till the end, and I'll let you know how you can get some freebies to help make your travel before, during, and after as stress-free as possible. Welcome to episode 1. In this episode, I'd love to share a bit about who I am and why I'm so excited to share the information on this podcast with you.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a second. So could y'all hear that? Could everybody hear that? I feel like that one was actually really loud, and hopefully y'all could hear that, because I know we've had issues in the past where everybody's like, can you turn it up? We can't hear it. So tell me in the comments that y'all heard that. I am going to play a little bit more about her podcast in a second, but I have to say, one of the things that's so fun for me is whenever I get that kind of like, ooh, I like that. Like, what's this going to be about? This is fun. And maybe that's just me. Like, I understand not everybody's personality is all like spunky and like super fun. And like, I don't know. I know, or very different from me. I have lots of energy, lots of just pizzazz, if you will. And I love a good podcast that kind of gets me like, oh, okay. Because I'm usually running. Like, to be really honest, I'm running, or I'm doing something around the house, or I'm driving when I'm listening to podcasts. So whenever I come across one that has some really good music, I enjoy that. And that really felt like it fits the tone of what she's trying to accomplish. Yeah. Hi, Mike. So happy that you're here. I wouldn't say it was loud, but it was audible. I know. I've got to get I need to upload the videos of all these beforehand. I'm going to make a note. I think I was supposed to make a note to myself last time to do that. But yeah, I'm going to make a note too to do that. But I really like how it was very good in this is what it's for. Like, stick around for some freebies. Like, I'm trying to think of the phrases that she said that really stuck in my head. And as a traveler, it's the before, during, and after. So it's not just whenever I'm going somewhere, I'm going to learn, oh, this is what I need to know about this place. It's the before, during, and after. And maybe that's really specific to a certain type of listener that wants to know these things, right? That's actually niching down your audience even more, because maybe some people are like, just give me the highlights. It's like, but Lori is serving her audience in a very specific way and saying, here's what you need to do before you go, while you're there, and after, or maybe like while you're trying to leave. So I love this. I love this so much. Okay, so we're going to keep going. I'm going to go back. Maybe. Is it going to work? I did hit play. We're just going to see what happens. Maybe. See? Anytime I try to do something new, something crazy, let's see what's going on. Maybe. See what's happening. What is actually happening here? Now it's thinking. Oh, it's going to drive me crazy. Okay, so we listened to Lori's. Lori, my feedback for you, like I'm going to listen to this. If you still want notes on this, we can absolutely have a conversation about this, because like I said, she's a member of our Potty People, and we have monthly coaching calls, and we have our own group where we talk about things. But Lori, you are absolutely on the right track for your first episode, and that was only a minute. We only listened to a minute of what you were doing, of what you were creating, and getting into it. And I will tell you from my own experience of creating podcast episodes, I used to say episode 1 in the beginning of everything. Episode 10, this is episode 22. And after a while, for me, again, this is my own personal preference, I found out that I don't have to say the episode number right at the beginning of every episode. I felt really comfortable saying, hey, you can go to the show notes for this episode 200 or 75 and then give them a link to the show notes. So that's just my own little note for anybody that's thinking about, do I need to put the episode number in there? Is that necessary? This is totally up to you. There's no right or wrong way to go about this. I just know that after probably 10 to 15 episodes, I was like, do I need to say this? Getting going, and you're looking at, what information to include and what to not include. So I'm excited, Lori. I'm pumped for whenever you release this podcast. I think it's going to be really, really fun. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next one. So Kathy is actually here. Kathy's in the house. So the caregiver cup. Okay, and this is what I did. That was really fun. Look, there she is. Or they had a podcast that was already launched. I grabbed your artwork and we have it. Oh wait, I'm not going to be able to do it. There it is. There it is. There's Kathy. And I know Kathy's here live with us today. So I'm really excited. I think Kathy has such a cool podcast that is going to serve so many people, that already does serve so many people. I'm trying to remember, Kathy, when you launched your show, if it was in October 2020, is that when you launched your podcast? I'm trying to remember. Yeah. So she's saying, yeah, I love it. So Kathy actually has gone through, and I love using her as an example because it's very similar to my own podcast journey, except for she just kind of got to where I needed to be a lot faster. And that is, she started out as the Caregiver Wife podcast. And then she realized, like people that are listening to my show are not just wives, they are caregivers of all shapes and sizes and seasons of life. And so she was like, I wanted to switch to the Caregiver Cup. And I applaud you so much for making that decision, because it's not always easy to niche down more or to just, pivot, change directions. So yeah, October 2020 is when she launched her show, and I will be 6 months old next week. Next week. Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, congratulations, Kathy. This has been such a fun journey to watch everything unfold, and I'm excited. So today, let's get into, for anybody that doesn't know, her podcast topic is helping working women caregivers reduce their overwhelm and shift their mindset. So, her ideal audience is women caregiving for their parent, spouse, partner, family member, or friend while working their business or job. So, this is really interesting because, like I said, I think that when Kathy first started, it was a wife caring for their spouse, caring for their partner. And now it's really broadened her audience, but it hasn't changed topic. And I think that this is so interesting. And I think that it was the right move. I think that it was the right call, especially when her audience was telling her, "Hey, this is who we are." Responded to it that way. Now, you don't always have to make changes. If your audience is like, "Hey, we want this," and you're like, "I don't really want to go in that direction," you don't have to change. But I like that that she's really pivoted in this cool new direction. So I asked, "Why are you submitting your podcast?" And she said, "The podcast is old this month. Yay! With 1,000 downloads. So awesome. Congratulations. I wish that I had a confetti button. I'm having a call tomorrow with Melanie, my live video guru. And I'm like, "Can you help me get all the cool things that you have?" Like, she's got cool GIFs and like confetti and all kinds of stuff. And I need her to hook me up. I needed her to hook me up because we need some confetti for moments like that. So fantastic. 6 months, 1,000 downloads. Awesome. But she wants to reach more listeners. I need to decide on what of the options: starting a YouTube channel, going to 2 times a week or 3, and that's her podcast. Should have published 2 or 3 times a week. Starting a fun daily show, reality of the caregiver life, question mark. I love this. That sounds really, knowing my situation, working my job, caring for my mom with lung cancer, and launching my digital course in May. I can only do one. Which one would give me the most traction and build my audience? Camera is fun for me, but I would need to learn the tech video stuff for YouTube. And 2 times a week seems like work to me. So kind of talking myself out of it, and 3 seems exciting. I mean, I'm just going to go with 3 because there are ones that you're just like, "Oh, I just don't, like there's some friction in the process," right? Like, starting a YouTube channel is not as easy as just saying, "I think I'm going to start a channel. Let me go record a video and upload it and it's out there." You can do that. Absolutely. That's a way to start it. But having done mine for 2 years and having watched it grow, I've seen that the more effort you put into the back end, it's researching your topics, understanding how a video needs to be under, like, there's a lot of nuance in it that won't make it easy. I'm not saying that it's impossible to go and start a YouTube channel, but it will be more added, I guess, work on your plate, and there's a lot going on. So I think starting a YouTube channel could be fun, it could be exciting, but it wouldn't be the easiest. Okay, so there's like, if we had like a parameter, I'm thinking of like a bar graph. That's not right. I'm thinking of like a weighted scale, right? But there's 3 things. So it's like, I don't know. You know what I'm talking about. But going twice a week, you're saying it sounds like more work. Yeah, I think that it can. I think that it could be, from someone who has gone, let me see, it was in 2019. It was in May of 2019 that I went from once a week to twice a week. It is a lot harder to keep up with the same processes, because I know, Kathy, you want to do show notes and you want to have extra fun resources and you want to do your due diligence. You want to talk to people. Going from 1 episode a week to 2 can be a little bit challenging, but it doesn't have to be, because you could change your expectations. You could pivot what an episode looks like. You could actually go from a twice a week podcast and have one regular episode and one short, like 5 minute. Actually, my good friend Heather Sager telling me that she's going to take her podcast to Heather Sager's show, and she's going to start implementing I don't know if it's 5 minute, but a shorter episode on Mondays, like a Monday motivator episode. And she was like, I really wanted to give my audience something extra. So she decided to do that. She was like, I'm going to have a Monday motivator episode, and it's going to be a little bit shorter, a little bit different than her regular episodes. And that's what it's going to look like for her. Again, y'all, there are no rules. If someone tells you there is like a permanent marker, I'm trying to think of like a Sharpie, like a permanent marker of all the rules of podcasting, they are wrong, y'all. I write in a dry erase marker. I write in the sand when it comes to the rules that I follow with podcasting. I do what's fun for me, what works for my lifestyle, and I just chase fun. And it sounds like you said, I saw up here. Yeah. 3 excites me: caregiver life, reality. And honestly, so I don't want this to be contradicting anything I said about YouTube, but I do like the idea of you doing, instead of just a YouTube video where it's pre-recorded and then has, video editing, and that part can be cumbersome. But what if it was like a daily show that you live streamed, very similar to what we're doing now? Maybe not every day, because that is too much, but something where you're just like, okay, guys, go live on your phone, and you're like, okay, caregiver reality. Here's our quick tip of the day, quick something of the day, and it's 5 minutes or less. And you're like, did you know? And you could share a story, or you could share an experience that you had, or share something you're just like, I had no idea that this, hard thing in my life would actually end up being like a positive spin on it. And then you could go into a story. So I do like that. You'll have to share in the comments what other things you're thinking about with the daily show. Are you thinking about a totally separate podcast? Are you talking about a live stream? Are you talking about switching up the format of the Caregiver Cup and that being part of the caregiver life reality? You'll have to let me know. You have to let me know a little bit more in here. But I'm on what Kathy submitted, and this is really cool. I like having her little picture in the corner. I think that it's fun. Okay, I wish I would have uploaded this before. So y'all, this is just total example of me learning. Oh, okay, this is really fun. This is fun. Okay, so Kathy, I had put out a challenge to her about doing reels. It looks like she submitted a reel. I think that that's what this is. Kathy, tell me if I'm wrong. We're gonna watch this. Oh my gosh, that was such a delightful surprise. Yeah, I didn't know what this was going to be. I was like, oh, she submitted a video. What is this one? Y'all, that was so good. It was so good. I'm going to play it again. Okay. Okay, so this is what I love about reels, because they're so short, I could play it twice. It's like, it's a reel of my planner. I love the reason why I ask, what does this reality, life look like? Because this is what it could be. It could just be you sharing reels. Like, hey, this is what's going on in my life. This is like a day things out. I'm trying to organize what this is going to look like in the next few months. So yeah, I think that this could be really cool. So she says a separate podcast, like a daily separate podcast. So, I mean, it's doable, but I don't think that doing another podcast is necessarily going to elevate your current platform of what you're doing, because unless it's bringing in new people by having guests on your show that will share the podcast episode, or, getting out in front of a broader social media audience. I just don't think that adding one more thing to your plate is necessarily going to put you out there in front of more people if you're trying to grow your listenership. However, reels, posting on social media, doing that kind of stuff does have the ability to get your content out in front of other people. And the reason why I know that is the recent experiment that I've done with reels and what I have learned after doing my daily podcast for a year. If you've listened to anything that I've shared about the Potty Report, my daily podcast, you know I don't have hundreds of listeners over there. I have very few listeners on that podcast, but those listeners are very loyal and they listen every single week. But that took a while. There was like 10 in the beginning, and we're not even that, like we're up to 40 after a year. But they're loyal listeners that listen every single week. So you just have to make that decision. Like, is it worth it to have another like added stress for just to connecting a few more people? Or are you looking to broaden the, like, I guess the life cycle of, not life cycle, the approach of the Caregiver Cup? So those are just a few things to think about. And like I said, Kathy, we can always have a conversation about this later if you have more questions or more follow-up. But yeah, we need some confetti. I saw up here, Kathy said, cowbells are my jam. We got to get like somebody, maybe I got to like do some of the GIFs where, why don't you have a cowbell? But I need to get one that's like me shaking cowbells. I do have pom-poms somewhere. I just remembered that. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. We might have like Crystal shaking pom-poms as a GIF and like something crazy going on in the background. I don't know. You're so welcome, Kathy. Oh my gosh. You also do a lot of teaching and demonstrate a lot of thought leadership on your podcast, Crystal. Oh, thank you for saying that. I feel like, and this is funny, just recently, so authentic. Where does that come from? And I'm like, I'll just be really honest. I don't know any other way to be, because it like gives me the heebie-jeebies if I'm like not being myself. So I really do appreciate that. Oh, okay, it's Sydney. So yeah, so Sydney, so happy that you're here, and thank you so much for saying that. That's very, very sweet. Okay, so we are gonna move on. For, can I get this? So Colby submitted for the Walk and Roll podcast, and I have their artwork up here. So it's an inner-abled podcast. And honestly, y'all, this is how, and I probably shouldn't tell on myself, but I'm super disorganized in certain areas of my digital life. My husband knows this about me. It drives him crazy. Like my phones, I have so many pictures, so many videos. And I saw this image come in whenever it was in my Google Drive. Like it just showed up, and I was like, where did this come from? Like, I don't remember saving this. It was because Colby submitted for the podcast audit like a while ago. And I'm so good because I was like, I need to talk about this podcast. This is so awesome. So yeah, Colby, just know I almost deleted your image because I was like, where did this come from? Why am I seeing this? It was from the way that I set up my digital files. I'll eventually get my life together. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I got my digital life together, because I don't. I don't. So if you have thousands of emails related behind the scenes, it's okay. You're in good company. You are in good company. Oh, I will say one thing that we were going to do before we totally move on. Hang on. Let me Colby, I'm going to go back to Kathy for just 1 second because we hadn't done this yet. So I like to go to chartable.com, and I like to see, let's see, we are going to go, hang on, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Hang on. Let me do the whole screen. There we go. So Chartable.com is my go-to place for really just kind of doing like a check-in on your podcast. If you've never gone here, you've launched your show, you've never gone to Chartable, go check it out. Free. It's totally free. But what I like to do, this is actually where I grabbed everybody's artwork. And I love that Kathy, she looks so like, come hang out with me. Like, let's have a like warm conversation. That's what I see whenever I see her artwork here. But what's cool is you can see your ratings from the different places. Now, the reason why this is becoming more and more important, actually recorded an episode where Spotify for bus route users is now the most used platform that people are using for like to listen to podcasts. This is important because Apple podcast reviews may not always hold the weight that they once had, and you want to know where other reviews are coming from. Chartable here, like it'll tell you this is via Apple Podcast. So you can come and look at all of your podcast, or not all your podcasts, all of your reviews for your podcast here. They have Spotify reviews, Google Podcast reviews, and Apple Podcast reviews. So that's just like a quick side note, but I always like to look at Chartable. So if you checked out your own podcast on Chartable, I'm going to encourage you to go do that. It's chartable.com. Let me just put it up here real fast. So chartable.com, that's what I'm using today to look at everybody's podcast. So I didn't want to spend too long on that, but I wanted to make sure that you knew that this is where I'm finding this extra added information about everybody's podcast. So you can go here and look if you want to guest on other shows, you want to know where your podcast stands on the charts. If you want to know all kinds of fun things, you can go to Chartable. Okay, Colby, we are coming back to you. And we are going to talk about the Walk and Roll podcast. I love the name of this. I love the name of this show. Like whenever I saw it, I love the artwork that the dude in the wheelchair is like, yes, like walk and roll. I still want to say rock and roll. I love it so much. So an inner-abled podcast. So what is your podcast topic? It's about inner-abled relationships. This is really interesting. So an audience, ideal listener description is couples either thinking about entering into an inner-abled relationship or currently in one. So Colby, if you're here watching either live or on the replay, I want to know, does this assume that someone is abled and someone is disabled, able challenged? I want to make sure that I'm saying this correctly. So in an inter-abled relationship. The reason why I ask is because I'd never heard the term inter-abled until this podcast came across my desk. So I would love to learn more about that. So why are you submitting your podcast to be audited? We just started in January and want to see how we are doing and what we can do better. So they just submitted their artwork and want to know, like I said, what they can do better, or have their artwork here. But like I said, I pulled it up on Chartable. Y'all should see how many tabs I have open. Apps open in the background. So walk and roll, exploration, and sharing of the differences in their individual lives and stories, as well as discuss the highs and lows of their inner-abled relationship. So my first question is, do you have a low conversation that you are having between you as the couple? I would want some clarity in your podcast description, only because that kind of sets the expectation of like, oh, well, what if I found this podcast and I'm in an inner-abled relationship? What if I have a story to share? Could I reach out to you and share my story on your podcast? But if you don't do that, that's fine. But I'm just saying, like, there's an opportunity for you to connect with listeners on an even deeper level, where you could add something and say, the couple, we have exploration and sharing of. Yeah, I would want to know, is this solo only shows where it's just you discussing your own personal experiences, or do you have other, like, are you open to other interviewers or guests to come onto your show? That would be the only thing that I would add here to your description just to make it a little more clear, because I think that would be a great opportunity if you do have guests on your show to say, hey, we talk to all people, all walks of life that are in an interabled relationship. So yeah, so thank you. That's so cool. Love Chartable. It's Sydney. Yeah. Thank you for putting your name in there. Like I said, I don't know why Facebook gets funky, but it does that. It absolutely does that. So she has the interabled 5 love languages. They able check-in. Okay, I really, really like that. So on today's episode, we discuss what makes us angry and how we deal with anger as a couple, about how life is going. So it sounds like this is possibly a solo-only podcast for now. So I think that you're on the right track. I mean, I love your artwork. I think that it really conveys, now that I know what interabled means, this makes more sense to me, but maybe it's one of those clarifications that you wouldn't have to make for your listener. Does that make sense? Like for someone that likes to travel to a certain part of the world and you have like a certain lingo that you use, maybe it would be something like, oh, I know exactly what interabled means. But since I'm not in an interabled relationship, I don't know that I would understand the artwork just looking at it. So that's my only feedback about the artwork. I think that you could possibly even put on there bold and then like the word couples somewhere, or partners, or something along those lines. That way people know. And maybe it doesn't have to be on the artwork. It could be in the description again. So, and also at first glance, it seems like your description is a little bit short. So I would encourage you, and I'm trying to think if I have a podcast. I think I do have a podcast episode, and I think I have a YouTube video about your description. I know I have one on show notes, but I'm thinking about your description specifically. So go to crystalprofit.com and type in show notes and episode descriptions, and you will find, I know, a podcast episode for sure about episode descriptions and show notes that may help you kind of beef it up a little bit more. Because if someone is looking online or on their phone or wherever they listen to podcasts and they're typing in interabled couple, you want to make sure that it's kind of heavy. Like it says interabled relationship. How can you kind of expand that to include other keywords that if someone were looking up interabled podcast, like or interabled relationship podcast on Google, they would find your show. I'm a very big fan of SEO, search engine optimization, Google search, and all things like that. So I hope that this, well, Colby, you'll have to reach out and let me know. But I'm excited. This is a really cool podcast that you have here. Okay, so now we are moving towards Mike's podcast. So Mike has the Expositors Collective. I hope I'm saying this correctly. I hope that I just did not butcher that totally. So Expositors Collective. Am I saying that correctly? Mike, if you're here, tell me. If you're like, no, that's terrible, that's wrong, just tell me. Just tell me if that's right or not. But I do have the artwork. Okay, it's up there. So hang on. Y'all, I'm never going to get this right. Boop, boop, boop. There it is, the Expositors Collective. This is their podcast. So we are going to look at the podcast audit information that we got. And y'all, these are so much fun. I know. Like these, this is one of my favorite things that I look forward to every single month. So, okay, Mike, the Expositors Collective. So what is the podcast topic, the process, and involved in growing as a Bible teacher and a preacher? Okay. Now, I want to know, is this something, I guess, from the artwork, I can tell that is a Bible, and I'm assuming that someone who is in the Expositors Collective, am I saying this wrong? I feel like I'm saying it wrong, so I'm like sheepishly like, am I doing this right? I don't know. Mike, you can correct me here. But would they know exactly, like, at first glance what that is? Because I don't know exactly what that means. Obviously, my fumbling around about it. But so the podcast topic, process and stories involved in growing as a Bible teacher. So the audience is new or young Bible teachers, those looking for direction or encouragement in the often isolated, mentorless world of pastors or youth leaders. Oh, this is really good. And actually, Mike, I have somebody that I need to connect you with. And it's my good friend Deb Schroeder. She is in the group, and she does mentorship with youth, like trying to help other youth disciple like base leaders. And y'all would be a fantastic place or fantastic connection to make. So why are you submitting your podcast to be audited? Honestly, I'm craving unbiased critical feedback. The most recent episode is about the importance of seeking feedback from peers in order to improve, but I feel like I don't get too much of that. So plenty of generic comments like I love it or feedback about the content, but I want to know if I am an annoying interviewer, if the titles are inviting or not, if the guests represent a broad enough spectrum of Christian preachers and academics, if it should be tightly edited, or if the long form unedited conversation format is best. Obviously, I realize it's a religious and quite niche one at that, so I understand if it doesn't work for your broad-reaching purposes. Open up what Mike has sent in. Let me see. Hopefully, I can get this to play. Hopefully, we can get this to work. Let me see. And I'm going to look at your chartable information too. Okay, so what Mike submitted, I know I can see this here. So this was, I'm assuming, in you that you recently did. So Greg Jow in the collaboration and invitation from a branding marketing perspective is do you have brand colors that are specifically for your podcast? And the reason why I ask is because this text, obviously I can see this is Greg's, like this is his background and this is what it looks like. But this color here and this looks very different than what we have here at the top. Can y'all see that? Can y'all see his artwork at the top? It's very different in the brand colors. And I would challenge you to make everything, this is not just for Mike, this is for everybody. Any piece of content that you put out that is related to your podcast needs to have similar colors. It does not have to be exactly like the exact same hex codes of, what you put out every single time, but I would encourage you to always have colors that are very, very similar to what your podcast artwork is. That is like a branding that I like. I have certain colors. And the reason why, here's the reason, is if someone were to see this on your website, if they were to see it on social media or, being shared, let's say in a congregation or in a group of people, like you want them to know immediately, oh yeah, that's Mike's podcast. Like that's tied to his podcast, the Expositors Collective. Yeah, I know what that is because I know those colors. I recognize those colors. Even though consciously it's not something that we as an audience or listeners think about, it is absolutely a brain thing that happens when someone looks at what you're doing. And the other thing to ask is the Expositors Collective and what you have on your podcast. And maybe it could be that, oh, this is just the Expositors Collective podcast symbol and the Expositors Collective, like we have, like maybe it's two separate things. Maybe it's not directly correlated or tied to one another, but I would highly encourage you to think about those things and like, can you put on there on the podcast or something to like just the two images alone are kind of disconnected from each other. So I would ask, how can I tie these two back to one another? And that is to have very similar colors, same fonts, same logos if you can. So that is something that I wanted to bring up first and foremost that I noticed. And then we're going to go and look at, oh, I already had it. It was already up. I'm like staring at it. I'm like, what did I do? I know that I had this here. Let me make me bigger. Or sorry, let me make me smaller. Okay, so this is another one. I'm going to have to look up the episode in the video about episode descriptions, because I think that a lot of people, when they're creating their podcast episode description, this is very good and then it's very straight to the point. It's interviews and messages designed to help you understand, apply, and teach the Bible with power and clarity to this generation. What I would encourage you to do is put in words in there that say, because you even said your audience is new. Hang on, let's go back to what you said your audience was. Let's go back here. And it says new or Bible teachers or mentorless world of pastors and youth leaders. So I would encourage you in here in your episode or your podcast description to put in youth leaders, new or young Bible leaders, Bible teachers. I probably said that wrong, but the word Bible teacher, because select immediately. I mean, not kind of wonder like, oh, like so-and-so told me about Mike's podcast. I'm going to go check it out. And I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, is this for me? Is this something that I should listen to? Am I going to enjoy this? Do the principles here apply to me? I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm a youth leader, but does this apply to me? But if you call it out in the description, this podcast was created for youth leaders or new or young Bible teachers. Like, put it in the description so someone knows immediately. If they are in a different area, they're like, oh, I don't know if this is for me, but I'm going to listen to it. Because I can tell you right now that after being around so many different people that are avid listeners of podcast, they will tell me, oh, I don't do that, but I listen to that podcast. Great example. Brian Buffini, he is a real estate mogul in Southern California. Okay. But my mom has sold real estate and she loves learning from him. He's a great motivational speaker. He's a great interviewer. And he started a podcast several years ago and he has a very thick accent. And it's not very thick because he's been in the US for many, many years, but he still has one and he's fun to listen to. And so I will listen to his podcast because he has a great message that is motivating, that is about leadership. And he's family life, like he has a great background. I listen to his podcast even though I'm not in real estate and I'll probably never sell real estate or do anything real estate related, but I still listen to his show. So there may be people in this industry of, being in the church or doing anything like that may still want to listen to your podcast even though they're not Bible teachers. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that gives you a different perspective of how you think of your audience, because I know there's a lot of people that listen to my podcast that are like, they are trying to decide whether they want to be a podcaster or not. I've had people tell me that. Oh, I've been listening to your podcast forever. Oh, do you have a podcast? No, not yet. Maybe one day, but not yet. So think about not just the people you're currently reaching, but the opportunities you have to reach other people in your industry. Ooh, that felt like a long-winded one. If I went off on a little bit, that was like a really long-winded one. But y'all know I love looking at the different reviews that you can get here on Chartable. These are great. You have 80 reviews. That's really, really awesome. Sorry, I felt a yawn coming on right in the middle of me talking. And of course, I'm out of water. But yeah, these are fantastic. And again, you can see these were submitted via Apple Podcasts. You can see. Okay, so he wanted to know about the titles. So for titles, I think that this isn't really very clear, but I am a fan of, I teach how-to stuff. how to do a video podcast. Should you have a video podcast? I like to ask questions because that is how my audience responds to content. They like to know this episode is going to show me how to do this one thing, or this episode is going to expand my mind on this one topic. But just collaboration and invitation, that it makes me wonder, oh, is this just an interview? Like what is this really talking about? Right? So I would go a little bit further, a little bit deeper. I would even from this just first sentence right here, you can see that you are talking about a great experience from the preaching team at New Life Fellowship. So you could go and change the title to say collaboration from the preaching team at New Life Fellowship. So I would just challenge you, and something I learned a long time ago in copywriting is, when you're coming up with titles, if you want to get better at it, all my copywriting friends, like this is the secret. If you have been wondering, like, how do I write better titles for my podcast, on my website, on any kind of captions, the secret is to write a whole bunch of them and then pick one. So if you want to get better at writing better titles, maybe write 10 to 20. I know this sounds really crazy. And I did this for a really, really long time. I would say, I don't know what to title this. So I would just let brain dump, let all the ideas flow out, and I wouldn't judge them like, oh, that's terrible. Nope, just let flow out and say, okay, collaboration invitation with New Life Preacher or New Life team from, Queens in New York. Okay, I kind of like that. A great conversation with the team at, Queens, New Life, New York, like whatever, just let all of that stuff flow out. And some of it may be total garbage. And you're just like, this is not very good. But the more you keep practicing and doing that, it's a muscle. It really is. Like writing really well, especially online for your podcast, website, anything like that, gets better over time, but you just have to keep practicing and you have to keep doing it over and over and over again. But I think that you're on the right track. I think that you already have so many reviews. That's fantastic. And let's look at this real fast. So it says you have a rank history. And this is really cool to see. So your podcast, and this is, again, what I love about Chartable, is so the Expositors Collective. I still want to know if I'm saying that right. I'm going to go look it up. So you have ranked for a very long time. You're in the top 210 or 200, so 213, and then you ranked again as 209. That's really cool. That's really, really cool to say, oh, I'm in the top 250 podcast for the Christianity, chart or category. That's what it is. Christianity category for Ireland. How cool is that? You put that on your website. Like that's so amazing. You can use that as part of marketing. Tell people like, yeah, if you want to listen to our show, we recently ranked, it was 209 in Ireland as a top Christianity podcast, and we're really proud of that. I love this marketing strategy, and I think it's really cool. Another cool way to use Chartable. So y'all let me know, tell me in the comments, is what we're talking about today helpful? Do you like this? Do you not like this? Normally we go for an hour, but I still have a few more that I want to do. So I'm going to try to get through them. Actually, I have 4 more. Y'all, I told you we had so many that were submitted. So I'm going to keep going. We're going to move on to David. So David has, and I have his stuff here, the Motor City Hypnotist podcast. Okay, I hope I said that one right. Yeah, I said that one right. Let me pull up his application. All right, David. So David has the Motor City Hypnotist podcast. He has launched. You can see. Oh, wait, hang on. Nope. Yep, that one. One day I'll get better. One day I'll get better at it. Oh my gosh, y'all. This is so ridiculous. Okay. So what is your podcast topic? It's mental health, inspiration, motivation, and hypnosis. So I get that from the title, right? He's a hypnotist. He calls it out right there. The Motor City Hypnotist podcast. Your audience, your listener, what is or sorry, let me read that again. The audience or ideal listener description. Who are you talking to? Those looking to make changes in thinking that leads to better mental health. I could totally get that from exactly what your title is and what you said your podcast topic is. So that is on track. So why are you submitting your podcast to be audited? I would like feedback as far as structure, appeal, if there is a connection with my audience, and how likely people are to check back in. Okay, so this is really good. So he submitted an audio clip. Let me close out these other ones that we have. So hopefully this is going to work. We're going to try this again. I'm going to have to figure out how to create like a video because I know I can upload videos beforehand. It's thinking. Okay. So we are going to play this one for David.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
In this episode of the Motor City Hypnotist Podcast, we're going to finish up with the episode called Failure is an Option. This is part 2. If you've not listened to part 1, hop back an episode so you can catch up and you can meet us right where we're at. We're going to continue on with that. As usual, I'm giving a bunch of free stuff, including a free hypnosis guide, my Hypnosis for Confidence download, and I'll give you a couple other treats along the way.
The reason why there's a part 2 is because we failed to
get it all done.
Part 1.
You have a brain like a chicken.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
Oh, good for you.
We'll be right back, folks.
Get ready for the Motor City Hypnotist. Did It All Right, originating from the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan. He has hypnotized thousands of people from all over the United States. Did It All Right has been featured on news outlets all across the country. And it's the clinical...
Oh my gosh. Okay, so this is really cool. I like that it had so many layers to it. That was really cool. Typically whenever I'm listening to shows, I love like how it started and it's like, oh wait, hang on, this is part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, like go back, go check it out. I think that was very good direction on your part to make sure that people aren't just like, wait, what did I just walk into? You said part 2, but where's part 1? And you're just like, hey, hop back an episode. So, David, and I don't know if that was you talking, if that was your, like, is this your host? Is this your guest? Tell me a little bit more. I don't know if you're here live with us, but if you're watching on the replay, tell me a little bit more about the dynamic of your show. Cause I really sorry, I just realized my microphone's like way down. Cause I really like the layering of everything that you just did. I have to check one thing again. Like I said, I'll eventually get my life together with everything, but I cannot wait for the day whenever I can be like, can someone else just come and handle all the technology? If you didn't know this, if you feel the same way, like we have a very deep understanding of each other because I like technology, but also tech gremlins and all the other things that come along with it, like setting it all up. So back to David and his podcast. I like that he calls out that this is part 2 of, I don't know if it's a 2-part series or how long it's going to be, but I love the layering of music, of, hey, we have a bunch of really fun resources for you. We have so many things that are going to help you in your journey. I think that's very encouraging, especially for someone who maybe is brand new to hypnosis and they're just like, what am I walking into? Right? Like, so you have to think about these things from a strategic point. If anybody is watching and you have a business that is related to your podcast or your podcast is supporting your business, you have to think of when someone enters into my podcast world, right? They enter in my podcast funnel, if you want to call it that. What is their experience, right? Am I confusing a brand new listener by talking about something that, like when I say, oh, we talked about it last episode, like, sorry, you missed it, right? Like you don't want to have that experience. You want to say, oh, if you're just now joining us, go back and listen to the last episode because this is a 3-part series or this is a 4-part series, or we talked about that in this other episode, and you could give the title. So I like that you're laying the foundation for the expectation if someone is brand new to your podcast, who you are, and all the things. And we didn't listen to all of it, but I heard the beginning of, we are like, I have hypnotized so many people and I've worked with so many clients, and I love the credibility booster. I think that that really helps, especially when someone is new to important. So I'm going to share a chartable for David for the Motor City Hypnotist. I don't know why it's real like catchy. I like the way it is. I like your artwork. I think it's very simple. I know that we have it at the top, but I can see a little bit better here. It's very simple, and I like that Hypnotist is in like a different color for the brand, and I love the swirl. It reminds me of those do you know those things that you used to did y'all have these as a kid? Those books that you would like stare at, or like you'd get closer and you like go back. I'm sure y'all have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's like it would look 3D or look different. Like that's exactly what that looks like. So if that's what you're going for, you're spot on with. But okay, so for those of you that we talked about with Mike and now it was Colby with your episode descriptions, this is what I'm talking about, and having one that's a little bit longer and one that has a little bit more information. And it's not just to have fluffy stuff, right? You don't have fluffy words and a bunch of filler words in your episode or your podcast description. You want to have things that are relevant to your show, maybe talk about your expertise. And the reason why I say that is because I can see it right here at first glance that David has been in practice for 29 years in comedy hypnosis stage shows as the Motor City Hypnotist. So right off the bat, I know, and it says he's a licensed professional counselor, like the credibility, especially if anybody is in the mental health or the physical well-being, anything to do with a weight loss coach or anything to do with fitness, anything like that. Or even if you're doing something where you're selling a service, having that immediate credibility of this is what I do, this is why you should listen, and this is why I am the perfect person for you to listen or learn about this topic. Like having that in your description is going to be very, very helpful. So the Motor City Hypnotist podcast discusses all things related to hypnosis, mental health, self-help, and inspiration without the psychobabble. And it's funny because I immediately was thinking psychobabble BS, right? Like I think I've heard that too many times in the movies. That's exactly like what I hear right after this. But come join us for fun, informative, and entertaining content that you can use to improve yourself and make a positive changes. And then it goes on to give question is come join us for fun, informative, entertaining. I would still love for you to call out your listener here. Now, whether it's something as blatant as this show is for people looking to explore hypnosis or supporting themselves with their mental health or something like that, because right now it just sounds like, oh, you're just like, you're a fun hypnosis who does comedy, like comedy routines. Join us for fun, informative, entertaining content to improve yourself and make positive changes. So I like this. It's like, it's almost there. It's almost there right here. I would want to add in one more thing. Remember, we've talked about those self-identifiers where someone can look at it and immediately say, this is for me. This podcast was created for me. It's exactly what I've been looking for. So having just one more identifier for the clients that you're trying to reach, like the potential people that you would see, maybe, I don't know if you would call them patients or clients or students, like however you directly work with people, but something along the lines of just calling out who exactly your audience is. I would encourage you to explore that, but I think that your description is fantastic. I think that it's very straightforward of what people are going to get whenever they listen to your show. So again, I just think that it's cool to come in here and you can look at all episodes that they've done. You can actually listen to a podcast on Chartable as well. I don't normally normally talk about that, but yeah, it's I like that you can listen, you can do or the latest episode, but again, Chartable is super cool and it's free. And it is free. So David, reach out to me if you have any other questions. That was really great. Oh no, yeah. So Mike says it's the magic eye. That's what you see. That's the microphone inside the magic eye. See, Mike knew what I was talking about. And then he says, I stepped away from the computer for a bit. I missed the Expositors Collective part live. Yes. Okay, so Mike, if you go back and watch it, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. You can put comments below the video or reach out to me, DM me, send me a message. But yeah, we just did yours. And I was like, oh, Mike's here. He's in the audience. So if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Okay. So do we just have one more? No, I have two more. Okay. I'm going to try to get to these last two. Okay. We're going to be here for 15 more minutes. I feel like this is like a challenge to make this happen. But I wanted to get to as many as we can because we only do these once a month. So let me see, because I have the artwork up here, but I want to make sure that we get the right name. So it's Jordan. That's what it was. Okay. Almost had the wrong name up here for the wrong podcast. Like I said, eventually I will get my life together. It's not today. It's not today, y'all. Not today. Not getting my life together today. So Jordan has the Vermontpreneur, and I knew I was going to be like, oh, I hope I can say this without sounding like a total goober, but the Vermontpreneur podcast. And Jordan submitted, and it's all about, it's so funny. It's a great play on words, Jordan. I applaud you for this. So the Vermontpreneur podcast is all about Vermont entrepreneurship. Super niche, right? This is very, very niche. I love that it's so focused on a central location because not all can work out that way, but I think that this is very cool. So the audience description is people interested in a good story and interested in starting their own business. So why are you submitting to have your podcast audited? I want to use Buzzsprout to host my podcast. Okay, so this is really good. So what we're going to do is we are going to go straight to Chartable because it's what we're using, and it just honestly is an easy place to find everything. I love your artwork. Jordan, I don't know if you did this yourself or if this is something that you had done. I think that it's fantastic, and I think it's very straight to the point. So let's read the description here. And again, I like that it's linked. Jordan, the only thing that I see at first glance, just because I'm always looking for the host, I would love to see your name in here. Hosted by Jordan, come and sit down with Jordan and have listen to the conversation, something where your name is mentioned. And I think, Mike, you had the same thing. I don't know that I saw your name, but if it's mostly interview based, then that may not be the route that you want to go. But if you are the one doing solo episodes, or if you are a big part, like you're the host of the show, I always like to see the host's name. And that could be a personal preference. You can take all this information with a grain of salt, but I do like to see the host's name. So if you have a way that you can kind of interweave it in there, then that could be super helpful. So the Vermontpreneur podcast. So it's capturing the spirit of the Vermont entrepreneur straight from the horse's mouth. Vermont. But there are some of us who take these traits to a whole new level and build businesses, start nonprofits, and in essence, change the way we live. In this podcast, you'll hear from a variety of quintessential Vermontpreneurs from all around the state who have drawn their own roadmap and created something that wasn't there before. You'll learn what inspires them, what challenges them, and what they've got coming down the pike. I love this so much because you know immediately whether this podcast is going to be for you or not. Because some people who may want to build a business, they're like, I don't live in Vermont. Maybe this podcast isn't for me, but I'm going to listen anyway. Or you'll have people that are like, I've been trying to start a business in Vermont forever. Now I know that this is the podcast I need to sit down and listen to, maybe even binge listen to. But again, Jordan, I would love to see your name in here somewhere, if that's relevant to your audience and what you're trying to do. But I just love, like, we'll have these traits to a whole new level, people starting businesses, nonprofits, and in essence, change the way that we live. I love how you threw in nonprofits, because I think that a lot of people that start nonprofits kind of get lost in this gray area where they're like, am I just a small business owner? Am I like, do I just need to learn from nonprofits? So you're throwing them into the mix as well. Support that part of your community in Vermont, but also who knows, you may share. So very, very cool. Again, you can see the ratings and reviews here. You can see they're from Apple Podcasts most of the time. So she wants to know about SEO. So for those of you that don't know, let me go full screen real fast. So SEO is search engine optimization. And we have had many conversations about this on the Profit Podcast. That is my podcast. And here, let me throw this up real fast. If anybody hasn't seen it, this is, oh, nope, there we go. This is my podcast. This is my artwork, Profit Podcast. Go check it out. I have lots of episodes about search engine optimization, and that's SEO. And the reason why is because I did not understand it forever. Y'all, I took, let me see, 17, I took a blogging course that was supposed to teach me all the things about SEO. I still did not understand it. I really didn't understand how it worked until 2019. I finally had a course, a mentor that showed me exactly how it works and why it's important. And now I spend in anything that I put out that is content related. If it's on YouTube, if it's on the podcast, if it's I don't really necessarily do blog posts. It's my podcast show notes, but I am very heavily focused on how I title things and how I go about doing research for these things. So I am happy that she asked this question, because this is something I think that we can all get better at. But Jordan, so if you're wondering about SEO, there's a bunch of approach this. So if you are just trying to talk to people that live in Vermont, right? That is your ideal audience. Maybe you'll have outliers that live in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, but your specific focus is Vermont entrepreneurs. I would use keywords and buzzwords that are relevant to them, right? So here's a perfect example. If I were looking up podcast, right? I am searching for a podcast I live in Texas. I live in Houston. I live just outside of Houston. I always say I live in Houston. I'm like northwest of Houston. I don't live in downtown or anything like that. But if I was looking for something specific to Texas, I would type in blah, blah, blah in Texas. But then if I was looking for something specific to Houston or my area, I would type in the name of the city or the area, like I don't know if everybody's been to Houston, or I'm sure in your own local areas, you have different, whether they're suburbs or counties or parts of the city that are not necessarily on the map, but it's what people call them locally. Those kinds of keywords may be more important than just the keyword podcast, y'all, because just the keyword podcast is way too broad. It is not specific enough. So you need to try to get as niche as possible with your what your audience is searching for online already. And we really don't have a ton of time to get into a bunch of keyword research and how that works. But what is the name of that? There's a tool. What is it called? I think it's called Ask the Public. This is a website that I wish I would have found a long, long time ago. So it's answerthepublic.com. And if I were to type in Vermont entrepreneurs, and I don't know, I always spell entrepreneurs wrong. This is terrible. It's kind of creepy how he's like laughing at you too. Like, okay, so Vermont entrepreneurs, if this is what you wanted to do, and y'all, this is a free website, this is not a paid thing. This is really cool that you can see, well, what are people searching for? And you can click on these different like clicks. Or hang on, click on these different clicks. Click on these different words. Uh, where is it? So no one's searching specifically for Vermont entrepreneurs. So let's do Vermont. How do I change this? Oh, new search. Vermont business owners. Let me see if that's going to work. I wonder if it's because I'm streaming that it's like, we're going to take forever to load this website. We're not happy with what you're doing. Okay. Vermont business. So the reason why I like this one is because it will give you information. See, it says zero. Okay, 177 results. There we go. So these are the questions that people are asking about Vermont business already. Like they're taking Google and all these like search things that I don't understand. It's the SEO part that I still don't always get. I don't always understand it, but this is where I get my information of like, if I were to type in podcast, like what are people looking about podcasts, and it'll pop up all the things like how to start a podcast, how to launch a podcast, all the things. But what you could look at is Vermont friendly? Is Vermont open for business? Is Vermont a friendly state? Why is Vermont so cheap? How to register a business in Vermont. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one that you could look at and explore. Is this something that I need to talk about on the podcast, or a business name in Vermont? So these are the questions that people are asking in different Google searches, in Bing searches, in a lot of the search engines. So I wish I would have had this tool when I first started. And then you can go further down. Let me see. There's some other like Vermont business stuff. There's some comparisons. Like you can absolutely all of these different keywords. But if you want to get better at SEO, this is going back to titling when we talked about earlier. Write more title, like write best like this Vermont, what is it? Answer the public. Answer the public. That's what it's called. I keep doing ask the public, but it's answer the public. Okay. Again, Kathy asks. So it is answerthepublic.com. So answerthepublic.com. And I thought it was ask the public. Ask the public. So I Googled ask the public and it was like, no, it's answerthepublic.com. Answerthepublic.com. It can absolutely help you get better. There's the keyword tool that I use is no longer free. And then they like offered us like a grandfathered plan. So, I mean, I use keywords everywhere. Love it. I still use it all the time, but I have no idea what the pricing is now because I have like this grandfathered price. I paid like $10 over a year ago and I haven't had to pay for it anymore. So keywords everywhere is another great tool that I do recommend. I just don't know how much it costs now. So that's just total honest answer there. Yeah, I need to do this more. It is something that it's not super easy. It's not super easy to just get SEO. And I say that from a place of, I didn't understand it for a long time. I didn't understand, why are these other people getting higher in Google searches than me? Why are other people getting on the front page of Google than me? So it's still an ever evolving process that I'm trying to get better at. But I think that it's something that we can all keep searching for tools that work best for us, because the process and the systems that I use may not work for other people. But I do agree that having great tools can absolutely help you SEO. And go listen to the podcast episodes that we've done about it, because we've had a few experts come on. I'm thinking of the episode I did with Chelsea Clark. She is a blogging expert. We talked about blogging. on there. And the one that I did with, I can see his company name. What is it? It's Ballantine. Oh, what is his name? Ryan Cote. A fantastic one where we talked about websites and SEO. And then we've talked about those lines. So those are 3 podcast episodes you can go listen to get better at SEO, get better at titling. And I know that I have a YouTube video and a podcast coming down in the next few weeks all about SEO and hopefully just getting them better. Just getting better at SEO because we can all do. Yeah. I know you. Awesome tool. I need to do this more. Okay, we saw that. Yeah. Agree, Kathy. I'm always trying to think of unique words and names and titles. But SEO is about picking the most popular ones. Yeah. And it's not really even the most popular. It's more about what people are already searching for. So don't think of it as like a popularity term. Think of it more as you are like the topic that you are serving to your audience is already there. You are just using tools to really deliver that content in a way where they're going to find it. Like that's the best explanation that I can go because you have your own language about how you talk about your podcast topic, your content, and maybe even how you talk to your audience. But if you can formulate it and package it in a way where people are like, oh, that's for me, or oh, that title, like, yes, that is exactly what I need to do. It's exactly what I need to listen to help me solve my problem, help me feel better, help me get more motivated. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, we have to focus on those things because otherwise, if we have very vague descriptions, then people don't know that's for me or I need to listen to that because they don't know what it is. So it's almost like you have to kind of work. I'm thinking of like a tunnel, right? Like the further, deeper down you get in this tunnel is like you start with your long podcast episode. And then from there, you have the version of it that you're going to put out to your audience, whether it's an audio clip, whatever marketing looks like for your show, a graphic. But you have to be able to say that, like, reduce what your episode is to a sentence. And that's hard to do. It takes skill, it takes practice, but I know that it's one of those things that the more you do it, the better you get at it. Because I've had people tell me like, oh, you have like your titles are so good, your SEO works. And I'm like, that is like, just woke up and I knew everything there was to know about SEO. No, it took me a long time to figure out what works best for me and to get better at titling things and make that a priority. That's really what it all comes down to is you have to make creating better titles, better descriptions, and sharing your content a priority in order for it to happen. Woo! I felt like that was like a long ranty thing, but yes, I hope that helps. I hope that helps. Better way to think about it. Thank you, Crystal. Yeah. So don't think about it as like I have to have all the popular ones. Think about how it's already looking for this because I want to be the one they find. They're already searching for what you have to offer. Like that is no joke. People are already looking for what you have to offer. It's just a matter of you formulating it and packaging it in a way where they can find you the next time they search for something. Y'all, this is too much. Okay, so Mike. Mike's back. Mike, I'm just like, of course it would be like the one time, right? You're like, oh, she's not gonna pick mine, and then you're like, oh my gosh, you did all these things and you talked about it. So, oh, this is Sydney. Okay, we already got that one. So I stepped away from the computer for a bit, then I missed when you did it. Thanks so much for spending so much time looking through things. Yes, we need more consistent branding. We used to do in-person training events. Okay, so it's a separate entity. So that was probably what that other graphic is. But it is probably worth it to combine the two logos or rather choose one and stick with it. Yeah, and you can always have one that is the, right? If you want it to be consistent, if you want it to be the Expositors Collective and like that's what it is, and then just have the one that has the podcast and that's your artwork, that's awesome. But I do think that the branding separation, it just kind of, it's a disconnect there. So totally, totally agree. Also, for the colors, in my mind, blue and yellow are the consistent colors, but you're right, they are very different shades. Yeah. So there are tools out there that can help you grab your hex codes. And I know I'm going to get totally nerdy on everybody for a second, but the hex codes colors of your brand, right? Like mine, you can see up here at the top. If you can see my brand, okay, see, I can't point this. Okay, you see this like teal color. I know that one by heart. And the red one, I can't do this. I can't ever point the right way. I know all of those by heart because I've used them so many times, but I make sure that it's consistent with my brand and every single time, as it is on my podcast, as it is on my YouTube, anywhere I share anything, it is always the same color or a variation of those colors. So this is really important. So if you haven't done this, I have a podcast episode about branding and I have one about rebranding too. So Mike, that one actually might be one to take a look at. I know you're not rebranding your podcast, but if you're going from having two separate brands, and yeah, my most downloaded episodes, title anxiety and PTSD. Think that there's something to be said about that and looking at, well, why is that my most downloaded one? Does that mean you need to talk about anxiety more? Or do you need to talk about PTSD more? Or did you tell a story in that episode that really triggered something that was like, oh, this is like groundbreaking. I need to talk about this more. So whenever you have a most downloaded episode and you're like, wow, I did not expect that, dig a little deeper and try to engage with some of your listeners and say, why is this the most listened to? Why is this the most downloaded? Because like follow the breadcrumbs to success. That way you can see how can I replicate and duplicate this and create something that is going to be, really impactful again. Okay. Yeah. And you pronounce expositors pretty good. Okay. Yeah. See, this is totally, I appreciate that, Mike. So what a reminder though, that is totally insider language, and the very fact that we have a niche, a technical word, and the podcast title only goes to confirm that is less accessible to the general public, or at least those are who are potentially interested. So I think that, having a niche word isn't a deal breaker. I think that it's something that people that are in your topic, in your industry, they will know that word. They will know exactly what that means, or they will have heard it to know, oh, that's something I should know, or that's something related to what I do. So I don't think that it like warrants, oh, I need to change this, but I do think that you could have a description in, or like words, verbiage, something related to what that means in your podcast description. So if someone comes across it, they still don't even have to understand what expositor. See, I don't know if I'm saying it right now. Expositor? I'm so self-conscious now. But they don't even have to know what that means as long as they have been identified as one of the listener categories. It's new or young leaders, like Bible teachers, right? So it's okay to have the words in there that are the lingo within your community and what you're talking about in your industry. But I think having those standout words that like label it, and I know you know them because they were in the application. So it was young youth leaders, Bible teachers, new or young Bible teachers, something like that added to your podcast description, I think can make a difference whether someone listens or they don't listen to your show, because then they can self-identify. Yeah, great point, Mike. I too think a lot about jargon and keywords and accessibility and findability. Yeah, it's something that we should all pay attention to. And the words, the language that our audience uses, not just what we use on a regular, everyday basis, are very, very important. So true. I need to analyze that. Maybe more than just the title. Yeah. I would ask your audience, Sydney, if you are looking at why an episode was successful and how you can duplicate or replicate it, I would reach out to some of your audience members if you know who they are, right? Sometimes it's hard, but reaching out to them via Instagram or via email list. Just say, hey, I'm doing some research for the podcast. I want to make sure that I don't overlook the fact that this was my most downloaded episode, and I want to know why. I want to explore why. Maybe you could even have like something where you're like, hey, would you mind filling out like an anonymous survey? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas at this point. Like you can absolutely run with it however you wish to. But y'all, this was an hour and 30 minutes. An hour and 30 minutes. I had planned on this being an hour. I was like, oh, we're just going to go through. And I still didn't get to all of them that I wanted to. So next month, I already have that we're going to do in the month of May. If you are brand new around here and you're like, oh my gosh, I need Crystal to audit my podcast. This was amazing. I need to look at all the, I want her to show, be on the lookout for when we do these in May. And actually, I have all of the dates done for the rest of the year of when we're going to do audits. So audits for May 2021 is May 13th. So Thursday, May 13th is when we are doing our audits. And I'm trying to think. Now, I said that, and now I'm like, wait, because I know that we are actually going to be in the middle of a launch that week. Oh, that's something super special we haven't talked about yet. It is a launch that I'm doing with a partner of a very fantastic program that I cannot wait to tell y'all about. I'm so excited about this. But so we may move that one. So I take it back. I regret it. I take it back. So it might be on May, but I'll let you know. I'd like it to be the first or second week of the month, but I'll let you know. So hang tight. If you want your podcast audited, May will tell you. Don't worry. If you've listened to the Profit Podcast, you know I put reminders out. I tell you all the things that are coming up. So just be on the lookout and listen on the podcast, and we will absolutely let you know. So great idea. User research could be ongoing for sure. I'm asking my audience all the time, what do you need help with? What was, your number one takeaway? What's something else that we need to talk about on the show? So yeah, just reaching out and just letting them know that you care and you want to know, because you want that feedback so you can give them and deliver even better content. And that's an insights with us. I love watching the previous one and so honored to be this one. Yeah, Mike, I'm so glad that you applied. I hope that you find the information helpful. If you have any other questions, please reach out. I need Crystal to ask for my help for my podcast. Yes, Sydney, reach out to me. We can absolutely have a conversation. This is amazing. And Kathy says, this was flippin' awesome. Ringing my cowbell. Y'all, I have to go get a cowbell now that Kathy talked about it. But if you are interested in learning more about how you can learn from me, we can work together, I would love for you to join us in our course. We actually have a course where I teach all the things. Kathy is a member. Sydney's a member. We have lots of people in our group that are already students of the course, Profit Podcasting. And if you want to know a lot of the things that we talked about today when it comes to your podcast description, how to create show notes, how to do all the things that come with starting a podcast, then reach out to me. I would love people, which is our monthly podcast membership, and that is only available to students of Profit Podcasting. But y'all, that's all I have for you today. Oh my gosh, this was so fun. I already can't wait for next month. But y'all have a fantastic day, and as always, remember, keep it up. We all have to start somewhere. Bye, y'all.